Hey, folks. Can't talk very long, but I've got a meeting in a little bit. But I wanted to find out what happened next, and I figured, oh, well, I'll see if I can figure it out for them too. Okay, now we're on chapter 3, A Narrow Escape. We're going to die now. That and other dismal thoughts filled Rook's mind as he and Finn and the girl with the red hair plummeted toward the rocky landscape below. Dense fog swirled around blackened trees. Scraggy mountain peaks stood like giant spikes ready to impale them. Rook closed his eyes. He didn't want to see what he was about to crash into. Suddenly, he hit something, and he felt his stomach lurch up into his throat. But the something on which he landed kept moving as if he were still falling. Rook felt the wind rush into his eyes as he opened them, gazing into the turbulent red sky. He had landed, all three of them had landed, on something slimy and scaly, and they were wedged between wide spikes. Tannen! Rook laughed out loud as he realized they were sitting on the back of a familiar friend, the flying dragon / sea monster, with wings as wide as a 747. The red-haired girl was laughing too. "You could have told me," Rook shouted over the roar of the wind. Tannen swerved to avoid a sky pod, one of many huge lumpy gray objects that floated in the angry sky. "That wouldn't have been any fun," the girl shouted back, her voice nearly carried off in the wind. "I'm Ivy, by the way." "Oh, I'm Rook. This is Finn." Rook nodded toward the half-metal prisoner who clung to one of Tannen's spikes. Finn looked way too petrified to answer. "Yeah, I know. Ruach told me. Hang on." The dragon dipped into valleys and careened around mountains. Rook knew Tannen was just having fun more than anything. He didn't get out of the water very often. Rook glanced down and saw a gray cloud racing toward them. "Ince below," he shouted to Tannen, who drew back his head and let out a stream of blue fire. The large metallic insects, like mechanized butterflies, shrieked in alarm, the sound like 1,000 nails against 1,000 chalkboards. The humans winced at the awful sound, unable to cover their ears because they had to hold on tight to Tannen's spikes. But the blast of fire breath gave Tannen a clear path through the swarm. "Good boy," Rook shouted once they were out of danger. The ant swarm tried to follow but couldn't keep up with Tannen, who, once he got going, was as fast as a golden eagle diving for prey. The sky changed from red to gold as they passed over the chasm that separated Skatos from the other side of Ahoritas, the Bridge of Tears, the only bridge that spanned the chasm, changed from a network of black metal girders to quaint moss-covered cobblestones. The landscape changed as well. The mountains looked majestic rather than threatening. The forest went from black and forbidding to green and rolling. Flowers appeared, breaking up the rolling green meadows with wild splashes of color. They were far enough away from the fortress now. Rook began to relax and enjoy the ride. "What is this thing?" the former prisoner shouted to Rook, as if he had just recovered himself enough to speak. "It looks like a dragon." "Oh, yeah," Rook yelled back at him. "Tannen is sort of a dragon, but not exactly. He's not dangerous, at least not to us." "He's good for roasting marshmallows, too," Ivy added with a laugh. They circled around wide, very tall mountain, so tall it disappeared into a cloud above. It was the tallest mountain by far in the kingdom of Ahoritas. Rook glanced back to see Finn's odd expression. "What is this mountain?" gasped the prisoner, unable to take in the size of it. "You'll find out eventually," Rook said. Suddenly, Tannen swerved and dove straight for a shorter peak ringed by white, puffy clouds. "Hey, we're going to crash!" shouted Finn, who saw the mountain coming straight for them. The other two only laughed. "Better hang on," Rook yelled. "Tannen's not great with landings." Tannen barreled into the clouds, which parted to reveal a huge, shining castle. Finn gasped at the endless array of turrets and towers, almost forgetting to hang on as the dragon bumped and slid across the wide courtyard, skidding to a halt in front of a large ornate gate that gleamed as if it were made of diamonds. "He's better at water landings," Ivy said. Rook laughed. Finn looked stunned, his human parts turning green like he was going to be sick. Tannen opened his mouth as if preparing to let out another stream of fire. Gorp! It sounded like a prolonged burp. The huge creature folded his wings and lowered his head so his passengers could dismount. Ivy went first, scrambling down Tannen's long neck to the smooth marble pavement. Rook followed, helping Finn negotiate the dragon's spiky neck to get down to the solid ground. "You okay?" Rook asked the former prisoner. Finn nodded, still wobbly. He gazed in awe at the beautiful castle in front of him, a castle nestled in the clouds, sparkling brilliantly in the sun. He shook his head in disbelief. "Yes, I'm okay, but am I really free?" he stuttered. "Yes, thanks to Ruach," Rook said. "Who?" Just then the shining gate began to open, revealing a very tiny creature cloaked in purple. His face was hidden deep inside a purple hood, although Rook thought he could see two small radiant lights that might have been eyes peering out of them. "Ruach," said Ivy, happily running to him. She reached down to give Ruach a hug around his cloaked neck. Rook had never seen anyone touch, let alone hug Ruach before. "Good to see you, Princess Ivy," Ruach said in his large, sonorous voice, so much bigger than his tiny form. He turned to Rook, who knelt, bowing his head, one hand on the hilt of his sword. "And you, Prince Rook, you released another prisoner. Well done. I'm glad to see you managed to find your way back." Rook could hear the slight sarcasm in Ruach's tone. "I was fine," he said, with a sidelong glance at Ivy. "But I sure appreciate the extra help." "No biggie," said Ivy, smirking at him. "Anyway, this is Finn," said Ruach, the hood turning around toward Finn. "You have been a prisoner a long time, haven't you?" Finn nodded, glancing down at his mostly metal body. This was what happened to prisoners in Skatos. They gradually turned to metal, their humanness fading away until they looked no different from the Forgers, the fearsome minions of Ponyrose, the enemy. "There isn't much left of me to save." "Do you want to be healed?" Finn looked down at the little guide, surprised. "You can do that?" "I can, but you must want it." Finn tried to nod a sure affirmation, although his head would not move very much. "Of course I do. I mean, who wouldn't?" "You'd be surprised," said Ruach with a deep sigh. The little guide approached Finn slowly, raising one of his long draped arms. A hand emerged from the cloak, each finger a thin white flame. Finn drew back nervously, but the hand reached for him, touching his metal skin. The touch was very warm, burning through the metal parts of him. He gasped, but soon felt the hard shell begin to melt off of him, turning to a fine dust that floated away on the breeze. He suddenly felt lighter, freer than he'd ever felt before. He looked at his legs. Both of them turned to human flesh. He touched his face. It was no longer cold and hard, but soft, like real skin. He fell to his knees, bowing before Ruach, weeping with relief and gratitude. Rook watched this scene, his heart twisting with the memory of his own melting not so long ago. Having received that gift for himself, he was determined to help free as many prisoners as possible. It was why he returned to Skatos over and over again, despite all the danger. Once freed, always free. Those were the words that had melted his chains. "You have the key, Prince Rook," Ruach asked. Rook nodded, pulling the long, shiny black key from his pocket and holding it like a delicate, invaluable gem. This was the key that had opened his own prison cell not that long ago. It had an ornate scroll Y bow with an odd-shaped bit that extended from the tip. I will keep this safe until you return. Ruach turned to Ivy. Princess Ivy, I believe you already know what I need you to do now, he said softly. For the first time, Ivy looked uncertain. I'm not really sure I'm the right person for that job. You are the right one, Ruach said, patting her shoulder. Do not be afraid, Princess Ivy. You know that when I give you a task, I also give you everything you need to do to complete it. Let me read that again. You know that when I give you a task, I also give you everything you need to complete it. Ivy smiled, nodding. She gave Ruach another quick hug, then stepped back, standing beside Rook as the gate and the castle began to fade, engulfed in clouds. From somewhere in his fading vision, Rook heard Ruach's voice, distant and yet very close, as if coming from inside his own mind. Keep a close eye on the children. You know, that's what I find so neat about this book so far. Because God gives us everything we need for the task that we have to complete too, if we just recognize it. I'll do chapter 4 later.